It's a wonderful joy to be with you on this Friday. And today I'd like to look at the wonderful example of Paul and Barnabas as they came back to the church at Antioch. We, of course, are thrilled when we think of the church at Antioch. They were started because of converts that had grown in the Lord going and giving the message in that great city. And then we're thrilled because it became a missionary sending church. And as a result, the Gentile world began to be reached, especially to the west. And after the first journey, Paul and Barnabas came back to the church to report. And we read in verse 26 of chapter 14 of Acts, "And thence sailed to Antioch, from whence they had been recommended to the grace of God for the work which they fulfilled. And when they were come, and had gathered the church together, they rehearsed all that God had done with them, and how he had opened the door of faith unto the Gentiles." Testimonies of God's working are some of the greatest ways we are encouraged. I know as a pastor, when missionaries come through and are thrilled about how God has done miraculous works on their field, I mean, we're all lifted. When we see God work through the lives of people in our own church, and they tell us somebody they've been working with just got saved, or they're seeing God answer prayer over here, or a miracle has happened here, we're all encouraged. And so it's important for us to believe God to do great things, but it's also important for us to tell what great things he has done. Paul and Barnabas rehearsed everything. Now, of course, sometimes we're a little afraid to say certain things because we don't want to be misunderstood for bragging about what's been happening in our life. But if we're really walking with God, and we know it's all of God, it won't come across that way. If it's for the motive that we want to glorify the one who did it, and we want to lift up those that are hearing, God can use it mightily. A preacher that I loved that came and ministered here for many years, he's been in heaven for a while now, is Pastor Charles Kittrell, who pastored in Indianapolis. And he would always say, he was a great prayer warrior, "If God does it, I'll tell it." And I think that's what we need to do. We need to have the kind of life where God's doing it, and then we've got to tell it. Tell it to our children. That's what our family altars ought to be filled with answers to prayer and divine appointments that we tell about and other things that God is doing. Our churches should be filled with the testimony of God's goodness. He's on the throne and he's working. We ought to bring people from around the world that know of God's moving in those areas. All of that is encouraging. But we need to be the kind of people that if God does it, we'll tell it.